spoken to you when I've like talked to myself in my head.
Right.
That Dan made fun of. Yes, it's brilliant. I've got a smaller one that I use every day. They're 15. What? What? Why are you laughing at me now?
I just thought you didn't like that one.
Total down to the toe, it's 142 rows. So I'll just do that last. Maybe I'll feel 40 when I wear it.
Yes,
That would be
cool.
excellent.
142 rows.
That's it. Yeah, we've got to edit that out, haven't you? I think they were about 9.
The stitch counter does not go up high enough. Row
counters.
Is there a stitch counter?
No, how can you have a stitch counter? Knit 1.
Jeez. Just a nightmare.
Nice pickup. Is it the 2-stitch job? Welcome to episode 96. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Really, it's felt like there's been a disturbance in the force.
Really?
Yes, although I do take it all back because the disturbance in the force was removed in episode 95
Right.
with the launch. And wasn't it exciting? And I'm so excited about this series as it runs on because I get to eat all the puddings
It's true.
of the Pudding Club.
Yes.
My goodness, folks. It's been so lovely seeing so many of you trying to make... that sounds terrible.
That sounds terrible. You have been making.
I'm sorry. I take it all back. Now, one of the things that we did at the start of the Pudding Club, which you were absolutely adamant on, and I think you were exactly right, is where you were talking about your baking notions.
Right.
And baking notions in baking are very important, aren't they?
Yes.
Using the right things.
Using the right size tins, the right size bowls,
Yeah.
the right, in this case, steamer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would happen if you used the wrong size bowl?
It was a litre
That's it.
Pyrex bowl. And loads of people said to me, what brand was it? And I did say on the thing that it was Pyrex, which it's just a plain, I mean, it's glass, isn't it? But it's made by Pyrex, and I just figured that everybody would have a similar sort of bowl. But I have seen some people using a shorter bowl
And what would happen if you
and
did that?
wider. Well, it does still work, but you don't get as much lift because it doesn't have as far to go. You know, because you've put it in a bowl that's wider, therefore your mixture is spread out more. So it won't rise as far because there's a bigger surface area. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
It doesn't really matter that much because at the end of the day you still get a pudding that's edible.
What's
But
so
if you
surprising
want-
is if you go in any sort of, like a supermarket
Yeah.
or any shop, you see these bowls.
There's always Pyrex
Everywhere.
bowls, yeah, and it will
With
usually
this
tell you
design.
the capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, mine literally, I measured it. I didn't know what.
Is it called a pudding bowl?
No, it's just a Pyrex bowl, isn't it? Because you don't. No, a pudding. You see, a pudding bowl. I did show a small one
Yeah.
that I've got. It's more of a pretty thing. It's a ceramic thing.
You could totally use one of those, couldn't you?
Oh, you could totally
And that would be
use
perfect.
that. Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be absolutely fine.
So
but
one
the
litre pudding
shape,
bowl.
the shape of your bowl will obviously dictate the shape of your finished pudding.
Yes.
So if you want something that's got more of a lift, then you want a basin, that was more like mine, that's got that height. I think there was only one person that I've seen that said that it didn't seem quite cooked in the middle, and that could be because of the shape of the bowl. And I said to that person, just take a little peek after the hour and a half, just take a little peek, and if you're not sure, just stick a metal skewer into the pudding, and if it comes out and there's sticky mixture still on it, it's not done. So just let it steam for like another 10 minutes and then check it again. It won't come to any harm by doing that. But
Now, with all that in mind, and of course the Pudding Club will be back next episode, and I cannot wait for that because, of course, as we all know, it's Spotted Dick, which is my favourite. Now, that, as I said, we're back next episode, but with all that in mind and everything that Kay's just said, we thought that it would be fun. I don't know if any of you know. You see, across the world, they might have things similar, but there's a thing in this country, and I always used to remember my grandma listening to it, and my mum actually used to listen to it as well, and it was Gardener's Question Time. where you get to phone in
I
and
used
ask.
to watch it
Yeah.
as well. No, it was
Listen, it was on the radio.
it was on the radio.
And what happened was there's a panel of experts and people phone in with their gardening challenges and the experts try and answer them. Well, we thought that we should do that on the next Patreon-only podcast, which is on Sunday at 2 p.m. and then, of course, the recording is broadcast. But if you can join us live, then you can ask us, you can type in and ask us any of your baking questions.
I might not know,
Yeah.
but I'll give it a go.
And we're going to throw it open wider. Yes, it may be Pudding Club related, but also it might not be.
No, anything on baking, really. I would say that I'm fairly experienced in baking. I've been baking for many years.
I think
I'll try and answer your questions.
the beauty of this panel is Kay has been baking things for many years and I've been eating baked things for many years. So between us, we have, I think, all the expertise that you could possibly need. So don't miss that. But Pudding Club back for all of us next episode with Spotted Dick. Today, though, yes, The New Adventures of the Bakery Bears is back. And it's back in this episode. And let me tell you, it was the most craziest shoot I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I have here some of the leftovers of that shoot. Now, what we do when we go on a shoot is we plan it very, very tightly to make sure that we get all the best possible shots and also tell the story that we've identified as the one that we think is the coolest for that particular place that we're going to. So what we have is, we have a shot list, which is here. And the reason why it looks like this, normally it's lovely and pristine, it may be slightly folded, but the reason why it looks all faded and weird is because, did it rain? This is insane. I've brought a plastic bag to sit on, but it's been in my bag. Actually, that is a fairly dry bit, so if I put that there, at least, if I perch on the edge, I am sort of dry. Oh my goodness. I mean, it was unbelievable, wasn't it? Because we were sat looking all week, thinking, what's going to be the right day to go? And we identified the particular day, and it just didn't stop.
No. Anyway.
It was just bananas. I have heard before that you don't mix electronics and dampness.
And wet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just crazy things were happening. I was partway through filming a particular segment, and the camera just stopped working, and it had 50% battery. But luckily I carried a battery pack with me, so I was able to...
And it wasn't dripping wet. I think it was just the dampness,
Yeah.
because it was such a wet day. It didn't stop raining all day, and it was that kind of drizzly rain that totally soaks you through.
It is. Now, when you see it coming later on in the show, you'll see my jacket and you'll look at it and you'll think, oh, that's how it looks. No, it's not a wax jacket.
It was just soaking wet.
I am literally soaked when you see me. It was, but do you know what? It was just wonderful because
Invigorating.
It was, well, the weather was not just wonderful. I never want to do that again. But it was a walk that I did 27 years ago to a place which I hadn't been back to since my gran left there. And I uncovered a story along that walk which I had no idea was there up until we planned this particular show. So hopefully you're going to love it, and that's coming later on in the show. British summertime is just around the corner.
It is.
And of course, in America, they changed on the 11th of March, didn't they?
It's already changed,
Yes.
yeah, which is very confusing in itself. Why is it not the same worldwide? I don't know.
Well, it's going to be positioning of
the sun. Yeah, I'm sure. I know. The whole thing should be scrapped, in my opinion.
Well, I heard, some people started to chime up in America saying exactly the same thing. Because the world is, it's just
a different place to how it was when that was first brought in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the farmers, I don't think, work quite in the same way as they used to.
It made me think as well about when Julius Caesar, Rome, here we go. When Julius Caesar came to power in Rome, there was only 11 months in the year. And they actually added the 12th month because the timing was off. It was just completely off. So as the year flowed through, sometimes you would be harvesting the grapes in the middle of winter.
Right.
Because they still thought the seasons were in the same place. And it was only Caesar, when he became dictator, that went, hold on a minute. We can sort this out. But what fascinates me is How did they back then, without their computers analysing the weather and sticking it up on an app, they were able to look into the sky with no electronics at all and go, right, okay,
They used the
this
position
is
of
what
the
we
sun,
need.
didn't they?
Well, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and the stars and all that business.
I went to the shops the other day, and granted it wasn't as bad as the full-on Beast from the East.
No.
I mean, that really was terrible. It was interesting hearing how across the country different people were missing different things from the shelves. So here it was all bread and milk. And
We never saw that though. Locally,
No.
we never saw that, did we?
No. I mean, it was more on the news, wasn't it, that showed that. But I saw one of our viewers was saying that where they live, they went into the supermarket and all the beer and crisps had gone.
That's funny. Talking of supermarkets, actually, we just wanted to clarify something because do you know we were having the talk about the supermarket trip last time and you saying stuff on the shelves and so much choice, and I mentioned about there being a million different types of paracetamol. Well, quite a few people commented on the video saying they had no idea what we meant when I said paracetamol. What we've discovered actually, paracetamol is a pain-killing drug basically, and we can actually buy it
Like codeine or ibuprofen.
Yeah, like codeine, ibuprofen. It's just another drug.
Tramadol.
Well, no, because but when we buy it, we can buy a branded name. Like I buy Panadol, which is effectively it's paracetamol, but it's called Panadol. That's the brand name. But you can just buy boxes that say paracetamol. And I just presumed everybody would know what that was. But I think like in the States, you would say Tylenol. So I looked up Tylenol and it's actually a brand. It isn't a drug in itself. Tylenol is the brand.
They make lots of different types of things.
They make lots of different types of things like cold remedies and all this sort of stuff. But I think generally, people were telling us, I would just say Tylenol.
It's similar though, okay, to how many people say, I'm just going to go hoover the house.
Well, that's true, yeah. We would say we're going to hoover the house, but Hoover is the brand name.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoover invented it, didn't he?
Yeah,
That's true. So it is a similar sort of thing. But I just wanted to clarify what paracetamol was.
It's the drug.
It's the drug.
Lots in store today. Brand new adventure. An unbelievable 6 watts off your needles. Oh yes, and actually that it raises a really interesting point, doesn't it, about knitting, and it's something that Kay highlighted just over here.
Yes.
Knit at your own pace. Something that we've been noticing, and I think it's an interesting one. I think what's going on in this country is there is a certain amount of a renaissance in knitting.
Yeah.
Knitting is becoming, and we always thought this might happen, didn't we, when we first started podcasting a few years ago. And as it's changing from something that it was into something that it now is, 2 things are potentially happening. The first thing is, I think some people are forgetting why they knit.
Yeah.
And the second thing that we've sort of seen on social, a couple of things that have sort of popped up, and it's made us worry about the knitters who've always been here. Are they being left behind and pushed out of the circle?
Yeah, I saw, like Dan said, I saw something on social media recently, and it was this conversation that was going on, and I was just intrigued by it. And it's kind of, I've had some of these feelings, and basically what it was saying was that a lot of knitters maybe are feeling that they're not able to be a kind of social media knitter, if you like, that they are feeling huge pressure to keep up with like knit-alongs and to have that particular yarn that's very popular or to be knitting that particular pattern. And that pressure is pushing them away from knitting.
Which is tragic.
Which is tragic and making them not want to knit. And, a couple of people have said that they were very solitude type knitters. And I think a lot of us are like that. And quite often...
We are.
Yeah, I mean, we are. And you quite often you hear a lot of people saying, well, I've always just knit by myself, but now that we live in this world of social media, and connecting with lots of different people, and I'm maybe going to yarn festivals that I never would have gone to before, that they are, whilst they are, they enjoy meeting other people, that maybe that kind of pressure that, my friend's knitting that and she's so quick and I've really got to keep up with her. And, a few people have said at certain yarn festivals there's been this crush of people, and we experienced that at the first Yarndale. It's incredibly unpleasant and...
Things always evolve and change.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know that
Things go full circle, don't they?
They do. They absolutely go full circle. And there are thousands of people that are loving those types of things.
Absolutely.
Because if you look across the board of things, if you look at music festivals, look at places like Glastonbury, that's a big crush of people, lots of excitement. So for certain people, that's absolutely perfect.
And they love that aspect of
brilliant.
it, and they love the excitement, and they love meeting people and seeing so many people excited about it.
That's
and
all brilliant.
Fantastic.
Because that's pulling new people into the art form.
Yes.
What's important is that we don't forget about the people who don't enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's really important that what we don't want to see, the one thing that we're all about is promoting knitting as an art form, as a lifestyle, that is a wonderful thing to engage in. And when we see long-term experienced knitters saying, I don't want to knit anymore.
Yeah. I just find
that gets a bit scary.
Yeah.
And I think that the underlying message is, whilst it's important that we evolve, isn't it? It's important that we evolve. It's important that knitting keeps pushing forward.
And that we're bringing in young people, and that's
very,
fantastic.
very important that we respect what went before and we make sure that everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
Because everyone is welcome, aren't they? You all believe that.
Yeah.
And I believe
absolutely. And I think, I don't like the idea that people feel, even if this is not necessarily happening, but that people feel like they're maybe excluded because they don't enjoy going to Edinburgh Yarn Festival, for example,
You're not excluded.
Or Rhinebeck or whatever, because they just don't enjoy that.
There is a place for you. There is a place for everyone, and you always have to find your niche, your groove. But in the first instance, you will never find us at a big yarn festival.
No.
For the reason that we said before, we went to Yarndale and we absolutely hated it.
Shoving out of the way to get to a skein of yarn. I mean, what is that all about, really? And when it's just not nice. It's just not a nice thing to experience, I don't think.
What's important is to remember the reason why anybody knits. And I think that's an important question that you should ask. Anyone should ask themselves. And you should always ask yourself that of anything that you do. Why do I go running? Why do I listen to certain bits of music that I listen to? You shouldn't ever do it because you feel that you have to. You should do it because you want to. So if you want to cast on a particular project, cast it on. Don't cast on another project because everyone else has cast that project on.
That thing.
There's a huge amount of pressure applied by social media, and it's very hot in the news at the moment, isn't it? People know that it works in such a way, it can plant seeds in all our brains.
Absolutely.
And make us do things that perhaps, given our own choice and our own thought processes, we wouldn't be doing.
No.
So the key for me with social media is you control it. Don't let it control you. Underlying message.
Yeah, absolutely. Knit at your own pace. And, this has made me think of the whole sort of knit-alongs. And it may be that going forward, when we're doing knit-alongs, that's maybe a larger project, that we make it that you don't have to finish it, that you just post a picture of your progress, just before the cal finishes or something, if you don't think you're going to finish it. Because that pressure to finish something, I think it is completely unnecessary, isn't it, really? So, I think that maybe going forward, that's something we'll do. When it's a bigger project, a pair of socks is, you can generally get, you can generally do that.
And guess what? The Drippity Drop socks have been released.
Yes!
Oh my goodness.
My testers finished super quick. It was brilliant, I didn't plan on putting the pattern out until a certain day, and that was the deadline I gave them, and they all finished super quick, so I thought, do you know what, let's just put it out. So I did. I put it out a bit early, started the knit-along a little bit early, so the knit-along's now running, and it's just been brilliant. I've seen lots and lots of socks. This is my original pair being knit up, and Oh, I've just loved it. Just some gorgeous yarns. One of my testers was Sarah, lovely Sarah Hepworth, and she used one of my yarns actually, it was this one. It's the Remus Lupin colourway. I'll show you this later. And I was just thrilled that she did that. And they look beautiful. You know, she posted them on her Ravelry page and on Instagram, and they just look lovely. And it really does suit a variegated, as long as it's not too mad as long as it's not too bright and in your face, then it really does suit a variegated, which I think is kind of a rare thing with a sock pattern, because a lot of times the variegation will disguise the pattern, but this one works really well. And I've had a couple of messages as well from people, and it's just been lovely, saying how much they appreciated the video. I put in a video tutorial on how I now pick up the stitches to close the gap, and the messages that I've had so far have all been very positive, and people have said it just looks brilliant, and they were just thrilled. So that really, as a designer, that's all you want, you know. You just want people to enjoy it and to appreciate it, and the feedback I've had has just been fantastic. So thank you to everybody who's purchased the pattern so far, and we've got the knit along running till the end of April, which I think it was about almost 6 weeks, which I think is plenty of time to finish a pair of socks.
Kay Jones, what is on your needle?
Yes, well, this is a pair of socks, and oh gosh, I just love this. I don't want this pair of socks to end actually, and I've kind of been taking my time with the second one because I'm just so enjoying it. And it's my Askaban mini set of socks, and I finished the first one. Oh, and I just loved them. I just absolutely love them. And I think the thing with using minis, you know, and doing a scrappy sock, because that's effectively what this is there's no time at all to get bored, is there? Because I'm just doing 10 rows of each colour. So, you know, you whiz through that 10 rows, and the next second you're changing yarn, and that's exciting, and you want to see how that yarn looks next to that one. And then I'm thinking, oh, which one's next? Oh yeah, you know, Marauder's Map is next. I can't wait for that one. And it just went by so quickly. And I love the pink toe, the Molly Weasley that I did. I just think that just looks so lovely. And this is effectively like a plain version of the drippity drop. I did just a normal slip stitch heel rather than an Eye of Partridge, but the toe is the same. I used my umbrella toe, which, to be honest, you know, I've cast on a pair of socks for Dan, which I'll show you, and I'm going to try this toe. I just haven't tried it for you yet, but if it fits Dan's foot well as well, it's fine. It's brilliant for me, fine for Bryony, and I think it will fit your toes better just because of the shape of your silly toes.
Yeah.
Then I don't think I'll ever do a normal wedge toe again, because I think the difference is, because you're decreasing at several points, you don't get that issue that you can sometimes get with a wedge toe. Do you know where you get that little bit of a ladder on each side? And that can be a really weak point. And I've had socks get holes very often in that ladder, because there's quite a lot of stress, isn't there, at that point where your toes are. And I think by doing this kind of a decrease, where you decrease at several points, it distributes that stress, and there's no area where, you know, it's just a decrease, if I'm wording that right. So yeah, I really love that. I just love the way that this looks. And it's not just the way it looks, it's the meaning of it all.
Yeah.
That really, to me, is what makes a project so enjoyable. It's the meaning behind it. And when a project has meaning, then I just love it so much more. And because this is such a huge love for Bryony, and she chose all the themes of the colours, you know, and they're for her, obviously, that it's just, you know, it just makes it extra special. So I'm just about at the heel flap on the second one, and what I did with the second one is I just reversed the colours, so you can see I'm just doing it kind of upside down, just to make one sock look a little bit different to the other, because they are scrappy socks.
That's weird.
You think?
No.
Oh, Bryony, I said to her, I might do that, and she's like, oh yeah, you know, the whole Harry Potter thing and Dobby and scrappy things and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
not matching and all that. I think it kind of suits the theme. So I'm just loving these, and like I said, I'm having to kind of ration when I work on them because I just love them and I want them to last a bit longer.
Well, that's acceptable, I suppose. I was going to say you shouldn't ration the projects that you enjoy knitting.
I know.
You should knit at
But
your
then
own
it'll
pace, Kate.
Yeah, but then it'll be finished.
Yes, I know. Do another pair.
I will do another. Well,
But they're never the same, are they? Because you've done it once.
No, I've done it once. No, the pair I've cast on for you actually is inspired by kind of this, and I'll talk about that.
All right.
So yeah, loving those 64 stitches, 2.25mm needles, and I'm still loving the Chalgoo mini twists. Absolutely are my sort of sock knitting favourites now. I just think they are brilliant. I've not had any problems with breakages. I know some people have had it where the cord has come out. I haven't had any problems, touch wood. Brilliant, love them. Dan Jones,
Yes?
what's on your needles?
Well, I'll tell you.
I'm going to get you a sock blocker because you need it.
I do need it.
You're
Look,
naughty.
look. You haven't seen this.
Look at this. Let me put it on a blocker.
Yeah, please
It's
do.
so
Please
exciting.
do. And look, I'm not cheating because it is on my needles, because here it is.
Yes.
I've cast on and I'm knitting away, and do you know I'm addicted to these now? There we go, look. It's Nicole C. Mendes yarns. Absolutely lovely.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Woman. Just let them see this bit first, otherwise they'll be drawn by the beautifulness of the other. So it's Nicole C. Mendes yarn. I'm just into the ropes. Mine is Everyday Socks. I've just finished a tutorial series on DPN socks where Kate did the teaching and I did the knitting. The final one of that went out actually on Tuesday this week, so the whole series is now available. And it was a brilliant thing to do because it just really focused my mind on the task in hand and got me... Sometimes, I think when you're doing something new like this, you have to be focused and get on with it. And had it not been for that tutorial series, I don't think I would have been quite so focused.
Right.
Because what was produced, please now show it,
Aha!
was this.
Look.
And it's really good. I mean, it genuinely is really good.
It fits lovely. I put it on my foot and I'm like, oh, it's so nice.
And casting this off,
Oh, it's fabulous.
I'm just about to film the final Dan and Lara project. And
So pretty.
I was feeling slightly disappointed in the fact that certain things, maybe hadn't happened that I wanted to happen with the Dan and Lara project. But actually the purpose of the whole Dan and Lara project was to get me knitting fingering weight socks.
Yeah.
And I have.
Yeah.
So that is an absolute winner.
It's slightly looser
Oh, I see.
than...
Here we
No,
go.
it's absolute... You haven't let me finish. Has he let me finish?
You got the wrong toothpaste.
It was. I had to get some more.
Shut up.
But I'll tell you
It's
why.
toothpaste.
Can I just tell you?
Why?
They've moved that one.
So,
And it's not where
You're
it used to
defending
be. It's now
very
miles
kind.
over here on the bottom shelf.
Right.
I couldn't even find it at first.
Kay sent me for nail polish remover.
I didn't say that. You were going to the shops anyway.
Yes, so I'm in the shop and she says, get me nail polish remover. There's always something on the list which is like alchemy. It's like turning base metals into gold. Could you get me? Oh, here we go. So I looked for a bit and then I just thought I'm going to ask. And even the woman who worked there couldn't find it. And the
They'd
reason why she couldn't
moved it.
find it was they'd moved it from where it used to be there
Next to the nail polish.
directly behind and on the bottom shelf. So it was really tricky to find.
I know.
Anyway.
So yeah, what was I saying? Yes, it's slightly looser,
Oh, here we go.
but it fits brilliant. I don't like socks that are
Tight.
super tight on my foot, and I know a lot of people do, each to their own.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely brilliant. But I prefer a sock that has got a bit more breathing space. I don't like it being constricted on my foot. I don't like the fact that then... people knit it with quite a lot of negative ease, but then what that means is the stitches are stretched. And I know, socks do stretch on your foot, I know that. But I just prefer not to have a super tight sock. And this is perfect on my foot. I love it. And you used 2.75 mils, didn't you? And
Yeah.
I reckon, I haven't measured the gauge, but I reckon it's about 8 stitches to the inch, which... is perfectly fine for a sock, I think.
It's a brilliant pattern. If you haven't knit Hermione's Everyday
Yeah,
Socks, I
it's
would advise
lovely.
you go and do it now.
It's just the
'Cause
perfect sock
It's
pattern.
lovely.
in
Mine's
the
Everyday
meantime.
Sock, absolutely wonderful. Yarn, lovely. Everything lovely. Cracking on with the rib of the second sock right now.
Brilliant.
What else is on your needles?
Well, because I've finished such a lot, And this has not been a conscious thing, actually. I was saying to Dan this morning, I haven't deliberately been doing this, and I only realised this morning that I think I've only got 4 things now on the needles, and it's the 4 things that I'm going to show you. That just feels so nice. It feels like fresh and spring-like, and, well, fingers crossed. And it just feels really good. So this is one of the things that's still on my needles, and it's another version of my stitching time, which I am writing up this week, so I'll keep you posted on when that pattern will be out.
But it's imminent.
It's imminent. Yes. But this is the one that is themed on all different movies. It did originally start as a Disney blanket, but then we kind of went off-piste a little bit, and it's now just any of our favourite movies. And I've got 9 blocks finished. And it's going to be a square blanket. It's going to be 4x4. So I think I've got, how many does that leave? 7 to go, I think. So this is the 8 that are seamed together. And I'm seaming them together kind of as I go. It's difficult to show, but hopefully you can see it. So we've got Toy Story, Finding Nemo or Dory, I'm not sure which one it was. This one is Frozen. Force Awakens. And then we've got, this one is Muppets Christmas Carol. Wizard of Oz, this one. Bedknobs and Broomsticks is this one. And the last one there is Harry Potter. And then the most recent one I've finished was Death on the Nile. And that one obviously isn't seamed yet because I wait until I've done 4 and then I seam those together and then add it onto the blanket. So I do want to knit another block on this actually. Me and Bryony were talking about it this morning, and I've got to do Murder on the Orient Express because it's possible I've watched it maybe 6 times since it came out. And this one I'm bordering with the lovely pink, but this one, the sample that I did was Cascade Heritage again, but just white. And I do like the white. It suits everything, doesn't it, white? And it just makes the colours inside just pink. It's just really lovely. So yeah, I'm going to be carrying on with that, and I'm going to start another block, I think, because it's super fun.
Is the Samantha?
Look at that.
Look at that. It's beautiful.
It is.
Yes.
I can't wait to have it.
I know. Well, you know what? I have to... It's tricky because, do you know something? I've not felt as engaged as a whole in all my projects as I do right now. And I'm not fully certain why that is. I have a feeling one of the reasons why that is...
You're feeling more engaged now, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You go through peaks and troughs with regards to learning. So, you know, there'll be periods of time where you're having to learn a lot and then it flattens off and, you know, you're in the zone for a bit. And then dependent on how you are, you might want to take on more information. And then, you know, you're in that learning point again. And I suspect that what's happened is after going through, you know, knitting lots of different pairs of socks, and yes, I've been doing colour work, but that fits sort of similar. Certainly that has. It's fit with a lot of the double knitting techniques. So I just wonder if I've been on a... Because you said the other day, I've cast on something else which I'm not showing today, which I'll show you next time. And you were like, when did you cast that on? Because I've knit loads of it.
Yeah.
My speed, still not quick, but it's gone up quite a lot.
Yeah, but that's not a conscious effort, is it? I think it's just natural, something that naturally develops the more that you do something, doesn't it?
I don't try and knit fast and I never will. This is a really, really lovely pattern and it's easy to knit, and you know, the yarn, as Kay said, is lovely. It's Drops Alaska.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember the ball band was in there. I was going to try and make it look like I just like straight off cool, but no. The ball band was sat right there.
It's colour 40.
I'm really, really thoroughly enjoying it, and it makes me slightly concerned because a colourwork jumper is now... It will probably be cast on.
We've got the yarn.
By next episode.
Oh, and we were looking for some yarn, weren't we? Because we need DK for
Yeah.
it. And I really wanted like a DK version of this Drops Alaska. There isn't one. They do a DK yarn, and that's the one that I've bought. We'll show it when you've cast it on. But it's a superwash. It's not, you know, this is non-superwash, the Drops Alaska, and I really, really wanted a non-superwash because the pattern uses a yarn, I forget which it is now, but it's kind of more like an independent dyer and it's not in this country. so it was kind of not a possibility. So I looked at the other people that had knit that particular pattern.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had used the drops yarn, so that's
Right.
the one that I'd got. I've got a mustard colour,
Yeah.
which is gorgeous,
I like
and
it
then a
creamy.
cream for the colour works. I think it's going to be beautiful.
I am now slightly concerned about the point that you made, and that was, it's all lovely and nice doing the colourwork yoke,
Yeah.
but then
It's just all stocking stitch.
you've just got all
And
plain.
I did say this to Dan. I said, will you not get bored? Because you do the yoke bit first,
Yeah.
and then all it is stocking stitch. And I
Yeah.
did say that to you. We can always look for a different pattern.
Yeah, I just wonder if I need to broaden my thought process.
We just need a pattern that's DK weight, which we can search for. So.
Although that yarn is so unbelievably cheap, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it drops. I think it cost me less. It was about £20.
That's
I think,
brilliant, isn't it?
for the whole sweater's worth of yarn.
Which is brilliant.
I think that's brilliant, and because I prefer. I'll be honest with you. I prefer garments that are with a solid yarn like this and like this. I'm not mad on jumpers where you use hand-dyed yarn,
No.
mainly because you have to alternate skeins, and I
Yeah.
just don't enjoy that. I have done it in the past. Don't enjoy it. So it's like we were saying, if you don't enjoy something, then I'm past the point where I'm going to force myself to knit it when there's alternatives.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I just wonder, I really, colour work is key,
yeah.
but it would be good if, because it's just, isn't it funny? All these lovely yolks, and then,
I know, and maybe you want. I don't know. Maybe it's because the focus is the colour work, isn't it, on
absolutely.
the yoke?
But why could there not be just something subtle?
We could always put in a little texture pattern or something.
Well, maybe so.
Maybe we could just do that.
Maybe that's the answer. That
Yeah.
might be fun. Mightn't it? Again, take something which you like the look of, because, there has been a particular pattern. I've also seen a lot of this particular pattern around, which has made me think, it's funny, isn't it? I'm definitely that, and you're similar that way as well. If
I like it, then that's fine. But
if everyone else,
I think you sometimes swayed, aren't you? Because you see it so often, you think, oh, that must be brilliant, and I must really love that because I see it so often. But
what's funny with me is because I've seen it so often, it's made me think, do you know what? Maybe I don't want to knit
maybe
that.
don't want to knit it. Yeah.
And are there other people like that in the world, I wonder?
Yeah,
Because
I'm like that as well.
right.
Yeah.
But it's funny because
you
at the
kind of
start,
I want to knit things that are new, and sometimes, when you've seen something a lot, you're thinking, oh well, it's not new and it's not different, and I kind of feel like I've already knit it. Does that sound ridiculous?
no, it doesn't.
When I haven't, obviously,
No.
but you've kind of knit it through other people because you've seen something such a lot.
I wonder though if there are people out there. Are there people out there that think about knitting in the same way that I think about Lego? And obviously, I see loads of sets, and of course you see the sets. You see the sets everywhere, and there's certain ones that you really want, and there's certain ones that you don't want. And it doesn't matter if there's 40 million of that particular set. I want to have it.
Yeah.
So, are there lots of you out there that think the same way?
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite cool. I sort of wish, in a way, maybe you have to be a knitter of a certain standard where you can just produce things. Things like this are such an investment in time that I don't think. Well, I'm not sure if I'd ever be in a position where.
Well, you've got to know that you're going to love the knitting of it. People are different, aren't they? And they just are maybe product knitters, and they'll just plough through something just to get to the end to have the finished thing because they would really want the finished thing, and that's great.
Maybe
as long
then,
as you've got some kind of enjoyment out of it.
You've maybe hit the nail on the head. Maybe it's the product knitter that thinks about their knitting the same way I think about Lego.
Right.
See a pattern, see a new Lego set. Yeah, I've got to have that. Got to knit that pattern.
Yeah.
If you think about it, doing Lego like that Imperial Star Destroyer, that took hours and hours and hours because it was huge. So it is similar to knitting.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the reason why I love knitting.
No, so.
What else is on your needles?
Well, it's a pair of socks for Dan. I only cast it on last night.
What's the inspiration for these babies?
Well, I was looking through. I brought down my boxes. It's so funny. I brought down this box of Opal yarn last night, and Bryony went, "Oh, is that your Opal? All your Opal yarn, Mummy?" I went, "No, it's one of the boxes," and she just kind of looked at me like this. So I was looking through, and none of it really jumped out at me. I don't know why. And then I went upstairs, took that box back, and on top of my shelf there was this little basket of the Opal Advent Calendar mini balls that I got this Christmas gone. And then I thought about the Scrappy Socks I'm knitting for Bryony and how much I love that. And I thought, oh well, why don't I just use those and knit Dan some Scrappy Socks? And I actually weighed out how much you get, because each little ball is 15 grams, so there's 360 grams altogether. So that's plenty actually for a pair of socks for all of us. Why are you laughing?
About Bryony knowing that, first of all, that it was Opal yarn. But then you...
That's true.
No, it's not all my Opal yarn. I mean, I'd have been just laughing my head off that she'd known what the yarn was in the first place.
I know. And she did. She just went, oh, is that all your Opal yarn, Mummy? It's true. And I didn't bat an eyelid. She's very educated in the whole knitting world, isn't she?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. So I've got...
I should hope so.
What do you mean I should hope so?
Well, she sat around it the whole time. So we
Oh, yeah. Right, okay.
Unless she's like...
She just kind of absorbs it, I think, through her
young people
skin.
do. Young brains do.
Yeah,
you know, that's what
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
So this is, if you remember my lovely curver basket that Dan made fun of. Yes, it's brilliant. I've got a smaller one that I use every day for all my little notions, and it's a notebook, and it's brilliant, and I love it, and I might get some more. Love it. Shush. So this has got all my lovely little Opal minis from the Advent Calendar, and I'll just pull one out and show you. This was day 2. I numbered them all so I would know. So what I'm going to do is I've cast on with... Bryony chose the first one for me. This was day 11, and it's this kind of blues and oranges and greens. It's lovely. So I'm going to do the cuff in this. I always do 18 rows.
These are for me.
Yes.
Oh.
Just said that.
Oh.
They're going to be very bright and
I don't mind.
fun, and so
I think you can get away with that with socks. You know,
Well,
you
yeah,
can
that's
wear,
true.
you know, and then a bright pair of socks that just sort of peek through.
Yeah.
I think that shows a bit of character. I like it.
I think so too. Peter Jones on Dragon's Den always used to wear really bright socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just cast on last night and I'm just working on the rib. I always do 72 stitches for Dan on a 2.5mm needle. Chow goose again, lovely. So I'm going to do the whole of the cuff with the first colour, and then I'm just going to do 10 rows of each, because when I've looked at how many rows I generally knit for Dan's socks, I usually do 50 rows on the cuff, so that works brilliantly. And then in total, down to the toe, it's 142 rows. So I'll just do that last section as 12 rows instead of 10, and that'll be fine. What?
142 rows.
Plus 18 of ribbing, plus the toe, plus the heel flap and turn. I think the last socks that I knit Dan, I weighed them, and I think they were about 9.
The stitch counter does not go up high enough.
They were about 9. I use about 90 grams of a 100-gram ball. Because I don't do the leg massively long. I think it works out between...
It's ample.
Yeah, it's about between 5 and 6 inches, which is perfect length for both of us, I think, isn't it? I don't like... Sometimes see people knitting legs. I can't remember who I was watching the other day, but the leg on the sock was like this.
It's ginormous.
It's like a knee sock, but I know some people like that, so that's fine. So yeah, so I'm doing that one first, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to look in my lovely basket and just choose a colour which I think will look nice and contrasty next to the one I've just done. So for example, like this one, I might then go for the brown because that will stand out. Or I might go for this more sort of black one because that'd stand out. Something I didn't realise about this advent calendar, and I think it was Sarah Hepworth that made me realise, is these are all colourways from existing colours of sock yarn, of Opal. Because for example, this one, I've got a full ball of this. This is the one that I saw loads of people knitting around Halloween last year, and it's the sweet and spicy, and it's like got a carrot juice or something on the front, and that's that one. It's like oranges and browns and greens, and I've got a full ball of that, and I'm saving it to knit sort of Halloween socks. And then there's other ones as well where I've got full balls of it. This one, Sasha, I think this is the one that we were talking about recently. I think this was my sock design. There's one of my hairs there. my sock design, a rainbow one. I didn't realise that, and
Disappointing, I think.
that's just what I was going to say. This Opal advent calendar is expensive. I think it's about £60.
For just a load of yarn that they've already released all
if you
year.
think about if you think about it, £60 for 360 grams of yarn. When you think of it that way, then it's very expensive, isn't it? You're paying for the packaging and you're paying for the novelty of it, aren't you? Obviously. I think personally, if they're going to charge that much, I think it should be like individual colourways, new colourways.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I must admit, that will put me off, I think, buying it again. This is the second time I've bought it. I didn't buy it the year before last. Like this one, I've got a full ball of that one. I know I have. I think that one's my sock design as well. And I think, well, if I've got full balls of a lot of these, then I can afford to take out probably 10 or 15 grams, and you could actually make your own, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that this year. Maybe I'll just wind off 10 grams, from each of my balls, because 90 grams is always enough. I don't know, I just think I'd just prefer it if it was exclusive colourways when you're paying such a premium.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of have expected that anyway.
Yeah,
it's
I must
Christmas
admit,
and it's an opportunity to be sort of exciting and a bit festive and a bit fun. Not just reeling off a little bit of all the stuff we've already done.
No.
I know what we'll do. We'll just do that. It's easy money.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
It's Christmas.
I know, and
Put the effort in, please.
I kind of think that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but in any case, I'm really enjoying these, and I think I'm going to really love knitting these. And I am, like I said, I am just lately putting a lot more thought into things that I cast on, because I want to be sure that I'm going to absolutely love them. And I know that I'm going to really, really enjoy knitting these. So, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well done, you.
Yay.
More colour work. Well, more colour work. Colour work.
More colour work.
Because we were talking about colour work before. I've actually finished the colour work panel and I'm working up the finishy bit.
The crown decreases.
Often called crown decreases. That is smaller than that, isn't it? Or is it similar? I don't know. Yeah, that's thicker. I mean, would there be a problem if I did the decreases with those?
Well, I must have given you that's not 5mm.
It's 4.5.
Well, these are 4.5.
Oh, it's 5 mils then. Just rub it between your fingers and
That's what I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
Can you not see? That's what I was doing.
see if you can measure the girth.
It does feel slightly thicker, but I don't think that's 5mm, and I'm sure these are 4.5.
So I'm golden then.
Well, yeah, you'll be
Excellent,
fine.
excellent.
Yeah, I mean,
It's one of the things that I find the hardest still, and it's something that I want to work on this year. It needs finishing and blocking. I mean, I'm worried it's too small.
it won't be when it's blocked.
All right, okay. I've learned so much knitting this hat. I really have. And, I've tried lots of different techniques with regards to, and I mean, I do think at the top here, do you think that's better at the top?
Yeah. There is a lot of puckering going on with the colour work.
It's the first colour work I've ever done, woman.
Yeah, and blocking will help that. It won't solve it, but it will certainly help it. Like, look, I mean, it's very puckered.
Where I've tried 3 different techniques, and where do you think is best?
I think it definitely improved a little bit towards the top.
Right.
I don't know if you can see, it is quite puckered. But like you say, it's your first colour work, and it will definitely improve with blocking.
But you
we'll
see,
just see. It'll be perfectly wearable.
well, look at it. Can you see the whole design? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's only not jumping out because, like we said, the contrast isn't massively high, and that was my choice, so that's fine.
But it is. I'm looking at that on the screen, and it's jumping out as much as I would have expected it to jump out.
It's fine. It's just that it is. Your floats are tight.
Yes, absolutely. And, I've changed the technique working at the top there as well. But the thing is, though, what I wouldn't want for anyone to do is, look, if you knit a jumper, and that's how it looks when you're finished, I think you've knit something beautiful. I really do.
Well, yeah.
Because
it's just a technique that takes practice. That's
absolutely
all
it is. Absolutely it is. And, I think when you're... depends on how you approach it and what you're expecting as the final product to be. I want everything I do to be as good as I can possibly make it, obviously. But have I enjoyed knitting this? Yes. Is it wearable? Yes. Has it got me from one place to take me to another? Absolutely yes. So, job done, I think. Because, you know, even if you didn't like it, there's lots of people I know who would like it, but I know you will like it.
Well, that's terrible, isn't it? I'm absolutely
What do
going
I
to
mean
like
that's
it.
terrible?
I want it.
Well, you can have it.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm only... Well, you just make the pom-pom. I can't make pom-poms.
No, I'll do the pom-pom.
And, you know...
I might have a tassel. I'm into tassels. I might do a tassel.
No, I want you to do a
pom-pom?
pom-pom.
Okay, well, I'll do
You know, I think this hat
I'll
design...
do a pink pom-pom.
It suits a pom-pom.
Yeah.
And then also it needs those thingies.
Oh, yeah, it does. I'll do those.
How do you make those?
Oh, it's you don't want to do it.
Right. Is it a pain?
It's fiddly. Do you know it has those little twisted cords? I found it quite fiddly to do, but it looks really nice. It's not difficult.
Right.
But yeah, just a little bit fiddly. So I mean, I'll do those.
It's
Or I might not have them. I don't necessarily need them, do I?
Well, put the pom-pom on and then put it on and see what you think. But I mean, they are quite nice.
They're quite cute.
And I can imagine it hanging down over your big winter coat and they would
right,
look quite nice.
I'll do them.
But it's the split back snowflake hat. I think actually it's the best Susan B. Anderson pattern I've knit. And I think I've knit 3 of her patterns.
Right.
It's certainly the most clearest.
Most clearest.
It's the most clearest. I was able to just whiz straight through it and, you know, no problems. It really is. It really is. So, really enjoyed that. Crown decrease is happening right now. At what point do you think I need to... Should I be swapping fairly soon, do you think?
Well, you're okay. I think you'll get another decrease out of that.
I have a tendency to go a bit
too far, and you'll be like really stretching the stitches. Well, when you do that, it means that you get... It's gappy, isn't it? Because your yarn's so stretched between the stitches.
What else is on your needles?
The last thing on my needles is my second Bits and Bobs blanket.
Wonderful. With that beautiful green.
Haven't shown for a little bit.
I love the green, actually.
I seem to have my hair in everything.
So I have your hair in all of my projects too.
Well, I think I'm losing hair rapidly. I think
I
I'm
have
going
always
bald. But apart from that...
I've always had all your hair.
I'm sure I'm not going bald, but it sometimes just feels like it. But this is the second Bits and Bobs that I'm just knitting really at night time in bed. And it's really interesting.
Can I just say, actually, there's one thing, because of the jog.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah, you get a disturbance in the force.
Look. And then there it is.
Yeah.
It's there.
Because you get a jog.
Yeah.
You're knitting
Initially, I thought, is there a way in a design process of adjusting the stitches? There must be.
You can avoid the jog.
Right.
You can do something.
Oh, okay.
You can do something to stop it jogging, but I think the problem when you're doing colour work is that might be a little bit more tricky. And it never bothers me.
Tricky.
It's the back of your head.
No, that's
You
true.
never look at the back of your head, do you really?
No. I just suddenly remembered you said about the back of your head. I remember as a kid once, I mean, how strange is this when you consider what happened to me and me losing my hair? I remember saying to my mum once, I started scratching my head and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You know what? I really wish I could take my hair off and wash my head."
That sounds like the kind of random thing you would say.
Well, funnily enough,
we've done that many times
I ended
now.
up being able to do it.
Yeah. And was it nice washing just your head, not having hair?
Do you know what? It was sort of all right. Genuinely, it was all right.
I think bloke is different for a bloke.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, for women, it is so challenging because it's part of your femininity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas with a bloke, you know, you sort of, you're lucky.
You don't have a lot of it to start with, do you?
So. Well, I don't.
No, I know some.
But, you know, some other guys might do. Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah, this is what
Please continue, caller.
I'm in the middle of a row, so it's much longer than this. But,
right. It looks like a
jumper. That's where I'm up to. It does kind of look like a jumper, doesn't it? And I just put in this lovely, can you see that bright green section? And this was one of the minis that I did recently in, what did I call it? A little bit of what you fancy, just a mini skein set. And I kept one of them for myself because I just loved all the bright colours that I'd dyed.
You saw something that you fancied?
I did, and I kept it. So that is
I'm having that one.
That's a full 20 gram mini. I mean, that's how much you get on the size of blanket that's in the pattern. And it's about 2 inches, I'd say. So that was an interesting thing to do because I had done that before in my big blanket, but I thought, I'm just gonna knit until I finish that 20 grams. So that one didn't have a name. This one is Mermaid's Tail. And this colour, the darker one, is After All This Time. I just had a little mini of it. And I've just started putting in this lovely one, which was another mini skein again from that same set. And it's just all these really beautiful random sort of crazy colours. And I just thought that would be so nice to knit with, because the colour changes so often. Oh, it's lovely. So I'm just knitting that one in. And this is how much I've got left of my 100-gram background colour. It's blowing out that. It's not that yellow. It's just a sort of gentle lemon colour. So I'm nearly through 100 grams already. So yeah, and I'm just working on this at bedtime. So it's going slowly, but that's absolutely fine. I'm not in any rush whatsoever. And in fact, I want this to last at least until we go away on summer holidays, because I want to have this to knit on when we're away on summer holidays, because it's just a project that, you can pick up and put down and leave mid-row, and I don't feel like when I'm knitting at night time that I ever need to get to the end of a row. You can just stop mid-row because you know exactly where you are when you pick it back up just by looking at the stitches. It's that kind of intuitive pattern. There we go, and I've got some ends to weave in, obviously. I posted a picture of those Askaban socks recently on Instagram, and quite often I'll get comments from people saying, oh, I could never do that with all those ends. It's just, I just can't face sewing in all those ends, and I think it'll make the sock weaker by having all those ends. And I've never found that it makes the sock weaker at all. And the whole sewing in of ends thing, I know you hear this a lot from people and saying they just don't enjoy it, and that's fine that you don't enjoy it. There's not an issue with that. But I just, for me, it's like you're just finishing off the project, aren't you? And it's just
also, Kay, I think there's a certain amount.
Doesn't bother me at all.
There's a certain amount of social pressure that's involved in this.
Yeah,
because I think what happens is someone says,
yeah.
I don't like. It might be the ends. It might be something else. But they say, I don't like sewing in ends, and people think then. I think human beings naturally want to be involved and want to support, and they go, oh, I'm the same. And then that plants the seed in your head that you don't like sewing in ends. I've got to say,
sometimes it seems to be fashionable on social media to say certain things.
And then you feel obliged to agree. And that plants the seed in your head. That's how this works. That's how it works on Facebook, how it works with all the political things that we've been hearing about in the news recently. It's seed planting, and then people then feeling obliged to agree with it. I've got to say, I really enjoy doing the ends.
And the sock, the Askaban socks, there's a lot of ends, and I actually kind of enjoy it because it's something different to do, isn't it? You're still working on your knitted project, but you have that little bit of a break from the actual knitting of it, and you're just doing something slightly different. And I like things to be neat and tidy and finished and lovely, so the sewing in of the ends is never ever a problem for me at all, and it will never put me off knitting anything.
I find it therapeutic. It's like that final few steps, before you cross the finishing line. And it's fun. I'm
happy to be getting to that point because I know I've nearly finished.
Get a little, a different thing in your hand, a lovely needle. Kay hates the curvy ones. But,
I hate those ones with the bent ends.
A bendy one like
those
I do.
Those tapestry ends with the bent ends.
Or a straight one like Kay does.
I can't get my head around that. Why is it bent?
So that it hooks through and then you pull it out.
Yeah, but the problem is, if you go in from like underneath and you can't see the needle, you can be pushing it through and you're pushing it through in the wrong direction.
That's definitely where you need a straight one.
Well, and you've always got to be conscious of pushing it through in the right direction.
Horses for courses, definitely.
It is, yeah.
Lovely.
So that's my second bits and bobs, and it just gets knit on a couple of rows every night, and it's lovely, and I love it.
Before we continue, the question I want to ask is, do you have any words in your home which were shaped by the bringing up of your children? For example, your child may not have been able to say spaghetti, so they call it paschetti.
Paschetti.
Or, for example, they may not have been able to say lemon, so they said melon.
Melon.
Or they may not be able to say farmer pickles, and they say, oh, no. I can't say that one.
We've got Bryony on video saying that.
I can't find the video.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
She was only about 3. It's the funniest thing, honestly, we've ever seen. Oh, it's so cute.
It's a bad swear word.
It's a bad word, but she didn't know what she was saying. She thought she was saying farmer pickles.
And before any of you naughty people start thinking, she must have heard us saying it, most certainly not.
Absolutely
Just
not.
take farmer pickles and play around with it, and you'll get somewhere close to
Farmer Pickles is the character in Bob the Builder.
Yes. The proper stop motion,
Yes.
brilliant spot the build. So I'd love to know, please comment below and tell us if there are any words that are deliberately different in your house and that have stuck.
And we always maintain it, don't we? We always say melon instead of lemon.
Lemon, I say melon. And
biscotti.
will always be, yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah. So let us now head off to York for our very first episode of the brand new season of the new adventures of the Bakery Bears. Welcome to a brand new season of New Adventures, and you join me on a walk I once knew well. 28 years ago, my grandma lived just down here, and I would walk this route on my weekly visits. And little did I know that along my route an epic story lay beneath my feet. Of huge castles and great warriors in an epic battle for survival. So today, I've come back to my hometown to see if we can uncover the story of one of the most enigmatic castles in England. These are the new adventures of the Bakery Bears. And it was 1991 that I last walked up those steps on my way to that house on the end there. That was my destination, my grandma's house. I'll never forget how steep the stairs were in there and the size of the breakfast in bed tray my gran would bring me on a morning. I don't know how she got up the stairs with it. And she used to keep the toast warm by wrapping it in a tea towel and sticking it up inside the tea cosy. Genius. But today, this is the start of our journey. And one of the things that I love about history is it doesn't matter where you go, there's always a story to uncover. It might be in the books that we read, or it might be in the things that our ancestors left us behind. But rest assured, there's always a story to uncover. And the one that we've come to find out about today is pretty unbelievable. Come on, let's go. And what's really shocked me about this story is how I missed it. I can't begin to tell you the hundreds of times I walked along this path and I didn't even realise that on this very riverbank and leading up all that way, two of the greatest civilizations in the Dark and Middle Ages stood toe to toe in a deadly battle for survival. Our story starts in 865 AD, 7 years before the first King of England was crowned. England is in the midst of the Dark Ages. Compared to today, it's a wild and desolate place. The country is divided into 7 self-ruled tiny kingdoms, and from across the sea in Scandinavia, the Vikings saw an opportunity to do what they do best: pillage. Led by a true Viking legend, Ragnar Lodbrok, they begin attacks up and down the coast of northern England. They get in, they take what they want, they burn what's left behind, and they get out. But when Ragnar is caught and executed by the local king, his 5 sons are not happy at all. They formed the largest Viking army ever created, and they appointed the wonderfully named Ivar the Boneless to lead them, and they set sail for England. This time though, pillaging was not on their mind. They were coming to conquer. To do that effectively, they needed to base themselves somewhere central, and they needed to have the best possible transport links. In 865 AD, the best and only fast transport links were by river. What set the Vikings apart were their boats. Most seagoing ships couldn't sail up rivers, but Viking longboats were different. Their shallow hulls allowed them to cross the sea from Scandinavia and head straight upriver to Ivar's chosen base of operations. This was the old Roman fort at Iberacum. And why did he choose it? Because of this river right here. This is the River Ouse, and it allowed the whole Viking army to get on their boats in Scandinavia and get off their boats here in the heart of England. So for the next 15 years, the Great Viking Army made this their base of operations. They called this place Jorvik, and when they finally finished conquering the 7 kingdoms of England, it was here that they returned to set up home, and we know an awful lot about the town that they created. In the late 1970s, I was about 4 and my brothers had just become choristers here at York Minster. York was expanding and a new shopping centre was planned. A site was identified close to the River Ouse and work began. But as soon as the diggers broke ground, they realised they'd uncovered something very special. You see, the soft spongy earth which you can see there right by the riverbank turns out to be perfect for preserving things that would normally have rotted away. And as the builders pulled back the first layers of earth, they uncovered hundreds of beautifully preserved Viking homes. Inside those Viking homes, the archaeologists who took over the dig uncovered the greatest collection of Viking archaeology the world has ever seen. Underneath this shopping precinct, 40,000 items were discovered, from shoes to vast quantities of keys, knives and spurs. Padlocks, to brooches. Vast quantities of plates and drinking vessels were also found. These finds specifically would go on to give this street its name, Coppergate, which means Street of the Cup Maker. And what is so utterly tantalising about York is the Coppergate Centre that we're walking through now has such a small footprint. It takes you probably 3 or 4 minutes to walk straight through it. Imagine if we dug in a much wider area, how many more things would have been found? 40,000 items just in this small space. This was a huge Viking city. Huge quantities of clothes were also found, and then one day, from out of the mud, appeared this sock. Whilst it looks conventionally knitted, it's actually nalbinding. This is a type of knitting that uses a single-eyed needle to create a meshwork of interlocking loops. This was a craft which travelled to England with the Vikings, and it was found not far from this church. What makes this sock so special is it's the earliest example of any form of knitting to ever be found in England. If you're looking for the roots of knitting in England, folks, this is it. So, I think it's particularly appropriate that just a stone's throw away from the earliest sock ever found, earliest knitted sock ever found in England, that I'm sat here knitting a sock. Oh yes. Now, I've got to say, it's cold. It's also very wet. But for knittability, for places to sit down and just take a minute and have a knit if that's your thing, or maybe just sit and have a little rest, York is superb. There's loads and loads and loads of these seats, and they are absolutely everywhere. I'm going to put that away actually because it's getting wet and I don't want to do that. So knittability, it's got to score highly. And not only that, We're actually going to be exploring this later on in the series of new adventures, but there's also the York Walls, and the York Walls are actually free to go up on. And up on the York Walls, there's benches all the way around there as well, and you could sit there and you could have a knit. So for knitability, it really does have to score quite highly. I think I have to score it like I see it. York is very busy, so there's always a lot of people around. So I think I'm probably going to have to take 1 off. So 9 out of 10 for knitability, which I don't think is a bad score at all. For 200 years, the city of Jorvik grew and thrived. And over the course of time, the name Jorvik was shortened to York. But then the summer of 1066 came and everything changed. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the populations of Europe were a simple people. The age of stonework, which would shape the face of the country in the form of castles, had yet to arrive. In 1066, the population of York, the whole country in fact, lived in small, simple structures of wood and wattle and daub, and this is what the city skyline would have looked like. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what must they have thought when they saw this? This is all that's left of York Castle. Set high up on a man-made hill, it was designed and built to control the population through fear. From 1066, structures like this were appearing across the country. They had arrived with William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy. After his victory at the Battle of Hastings, he'd claimed the throne of England, and he would now set about bringing this most rebellious country to heel. And he would do it by building castles like that. They were designed to conquer through fear. No one had ever seen anything quite like that, with advanced stonework and set up high on a man-made hill. The local Viking population were understandably terrified. Ivor the Boneless's ancestors suddenly found themselves being conquered. This was only going to end one way, with a massive battle. But that's for part 2. So I'll see you then for more new adventures of the Bakery Bears. Oh, I'm so glad that I'm all dry now.
I'm snuggling for warmth because I'm freezing at the moment.
Yes. Now, did you enjoy that? That was so fun, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. Walking, I mean, obviously I remember my gran, but it's only when you walk in the footsteps that you took a long time ago that memories come back, like the one about the toast in the tea cosy. And other things started to come back as well, and that's such a good thing. We will be returning later on in the show to find out what happened next. Yes, there is going to be one huge battle, and my route walks straight over the top of it. So we'll find out about that later on the show. Because now it's time for us to find out, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Well,
there's lots of things.
Shall we start with... You've been staring at the first thing for the past however long. I finished Dan's vest, obviously. You can see that I finished it. And it fits really lovely.
It's lovely.
I'm thrilled.
So am I.
That's the, the best thing about it is that it fits really, really well. It's not too long.
No.
I was bothered it was going to be a bit too long, but it's not too long. It's just right, I think.
Yeah, too long.
It's really nice. It's fitted, but not too fitted. There's a room. There's a room up there. It's just lovely. It just turned out so nice.
Yeah.
And, I'm very glad to have it finished. But...
She's already cast me on another.
No, I haven't. I haven't. But I think it has made me realise that, maybe garment knitting is something that I will do a bit more of.
See?
And I bought 2 books recently, actually. I'll show them maybe next time. I bought some Kim Hargreaves books because somebody recommended I might like Kim Hargreaves. And actually, I do really like the way the patterns are written. They're written in a way that this pattern was written. Do you know the more traditional way of writing a pattern? They're written exactly like that. And it doesn't give a lot of description with things like, it'll just like say sew side seams or pick up stitches. Like this one, for example, when the finishing of it, I was really worried actually about the picking up of all the stitches. And not so much the sewing together. I wasn't really worried about that, but it was all the picking up of stitches, because all it said, like when you actually had your 2 pieces finished, the front and the back, what you did was you seamed one of the top shoulder seams here, and then you picked up stitches all the way around. Sorry. And you knit it flat. It's not knitting the round or anything, none of this is knitting the round. It's all knit flat, because obviously this pattern was written in the 80s. So it's all knit flat. But actually what I did, it said pick up, I think it was something like 59 stitches from here, from up here down to here. So what I did was, I divided this first of all into half. So I put a little safety pin here, and then I divided it again in half. So I knew how many I had to pick up from here to here, which was a much easier task than just starting to pick up all the way from here to here. And I found that worked brilliantly well. So I knew that sort of from here to here I had to pick up 15 stitches. So that's a much easier thing to work out. It was very tricky, I found, picking up from this double moss stitch edge, because there's no obvious no obvious stitch to pick up from, because sometimes it's a purl, sometimes it's a knit on the edge. And in hindsight, don't think I would ever knit this again, but it would make a lot more sense actually to have slip stitches on all of your edges, because then it would be so much easier to pick up. I can't tell you how much easier it would have been to pick up. There's no gaps. And on the reverse side it's nice and neat as well. And again, for the sleeves it was knit flat, and then the last thing that you did was you sewed up the side seams, was the last thing. And I used mattress stitch for everything, and I don't think they would have used mattress stitch. Mum definitely wouldn't have used mattress stitch. She would have put like wrong sides together and just sewn over, I think. But I used mattress stitch, and that was all really neat. And then I counted my ends, because I know people are kind of interested in this thing, and I had 20 ends to sew in. And that obviously doesn't include where we've changed a ball of yarn, because I did split splicing for that. So if you hadn't have done the split splicing, you would have had obviously more ends to sew in. So I had 20, and that was just like where the piece is finished, because it's knit in pieces. It wasn't a problem sewing those in. And it weighs 550 grams, and they were just over 550 grams. I think it's 554 grams or something. So however many balls that is, they're 50-gram balls. But it was 550 grams. So yeah, it's all done, and it's lovely, and you like it.
I do.
And
I love it.
you say it's really warm. It washed beautifully.
That's the yarn.
It washed amazingly well. I soaked it in the bath, because the sink's not really big enough. I soaked it in the bath and left it for maybe half an hour, just with some soak. And then I squeezed out as much as I possibly could, just leaving it in the bath and just squeezing it out. And then I put it between 2 towels and rolled the towels up and just squeezed as much out as I could. And then I just laid it flat on a towel and just sort of pushed it out. Didn't pin it or anything like that, because I'll only pin a top edge of a shawl straight. I don't really like pinning a lot. I don't like over blocking. So I just laid it out, smoothed it all out, and it took about 3 days to dry, I think.
It did.
Because it's been so cold, it just took a long time to dry.
But it's lovely. I love it. Really, really love it. It's great. And, it'll go over so many different things.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I was so keen to have something like this, because, it's so wearable. And that's really what you want. I think with knitwear, because it takes such a long time to make and it takes such a lot of effort, you want it to be as wearable as possible. I do anyway. So, this really is a perfect garment for me. A sweater would never have worked for me, because
You would have got too hot.
Yeah. My core tends to get quite warm. My extremities don't,
No.
but my core does tend to get quite warm. So, it's cold today and I don't feel cold, so it's perfect.
And I was pleased that I managed to.
Do it
I did, in the actual pattern, when you look on it, it stops here. It's like part way through, a pattern repeat, and I didn't particularly like that, and actually it worked well for me to complete a pattern repeat, and that gave about another inch in length.
Oh yeah.
And
oh my, that would have been awful.
yeah, it just stops like here.
No, bad idea.
Instead you could just stop, it didn't tell you to complete a pattern repeat or anything. But the tip of the diamond lines up exactly with that decrease stitch here.
Perfect.
Yeah, which I really like, that kind of little detail thing.
I like the diamonds, the big ones. They're cool.
Yeah.
What else is off your needles?
Finished.
Lovely.
I did another linen stitch bookmark, and this is in my yarn, and it's Remus Lupin. The only thing I did different, I've got the other one here actually. The only thing I did different is I used a different cast on. With the first one that I knit, first of all I did a long tail cast on, and I didn't like the way that looked with the linen stitch, so I pulled that out and I did just a normal knitted on cast on for this one. And I thought it looked fine, but with this one I did a cable cast on, and this looks much neater. I don't like doing cable cast-ons, it's not my favourite, but it's only a few stitches. And I just think this one looked much neater with the linen stitch. So if I was ever to use linen stitch for a big item, cowl or something, I would use a cable cast on, because I think it just looks really neat, doesn't it?
It does.
Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's off your needles?
Oh, well, there was nearly two things off my needles, because I was so close to finishing the colourwork hat, but I have been more focused on the socks, to be honest, with me coming up to the filming of the final Dan and Lara project. So that will definitely be off the needles for next time. Hopefully with a pom-pom as well.
I'll do the pom-pom, yes.
But I finished my journeyman hat.
Yay! And you won the yarn chicken thing. You were very close.
Oh, that was cool. I loved it.
There was just a little bit left.
The yarn is absolutely lovely, actually. It really is just perfectly yarned.
Yeah.
It feels just great. I mean, you want a very specific yarn, I think, for a hat, because if it's remotely scratchy, it's not going to work. It wants to feel soft and just lovely, and it does. I mean, it does.
And it looks really cute on Brian, actually.
Off the needles, loved every minute of it, and the yarn was a gift from a viewer, so thank you so much. I've sent you a message, thank you, but it was just the most lovely, and I think she bought it in York.
I think did she?
I think so.
Oh, I thought she just brought it over with her.
Oh, okay.
And then posted it from York, because it obviously cheaper than
I knew there was a York connection.
Yeah, it was Knit Picks City Tweed Aran.
Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else is off your needles?
Well, I finished a pair of socks that you've not even seen.
Where?
Because I didn't show you these last time because I had so many projects, and then I since finished them, so you've not even seen these. And these are again in the Remus Lupin colourway of my yarn, because it's Bryony's favourite and she would have me knit everything in it, I think. His actual colours are, that kind of shabby olive greens and browns, and not particularly pretty, but in the scene where he turns into a werewolf, his eyes are blue, but they turn green, and it's like a bright blue and a bright green, and then obviously a werewolf is all greys. So I took that as my inspiration. So there's shades of grey for the werewolf, and then there's a bright blue and a bright green for his eyes. And I think it turned out really pretty. I finished a pair of socks. These are in the sport weight base, which I use, that Dan's used a lot.
Yes.
It's the 100% Blueface Leicester, it's superwash Blueface Leicester, and you get 262 metres per 100 grams. So I think it's actually quite a plump sport weight at that yardage. But I've knit several times socks with this, and so has Dan, and it's lovely, and it washes up so nice and soft. And being BFL, it's that little bit more sturdy. And I used 3mm needles and cast on 56 stitches, and it's produced a really nice snuggly sock for her. I finished these on Monday, I think. It's Wednesday now, and I said to her, you can't have them till Wednesday. She was none too pleased, actually, because I got them to try them on, and she loved them, and she's like, I'm not taking them off, Mummy. I said, oh, I need to wash them. And so anyway, I'm mean. I felt really mean, actually, but she gets them today after school, and she knows that, so she's kind of pleased. And I love how they came out. And again, I used my technique for closing the gap. It's honestly the best sort of corner neatness that I've ever had when knitting socks. So I'm really pleased with those. So they're all done, and Bryony can have those today, so she'll be very thrilled because it's still cold, so it's nice to have a slightly thicker pair of socks. I finished Dan's running hat, and I said to you the other day you should wear this because his other one, really, I've washed it again today actually.
Have you?
Yeah,
Oh, cheers.
it's in the dryer.
All
I
right.
put it in the dryer because it needs the dryer now to snap it back into sort of shape. But I finished this one. It's so fun. Do you want to put it on?
Yeah, okay.
And this is in the Shola and Stahl Crazy Sauber Ball. And look, I mean, for goodness sake, they're going to be able to see you running, aren't they?
Which is what I want.
And it's the right fit, actually, isn't it? You wanted it to cover your ears and still be close fitting.
Yeah.
So.
What are you going to do with that sporty yarn that you got? You know that sporty yarn?
Oh, the Opal one?
Yeah.
Well, I might knit you another hat in that.
Well, I think you should, because I think I would be interesting, wouldn't it? That would be an interesting thing for me to wear, go out, run with, and then come back and report back.
I bought a new yarn from Opal. I don't know if it's new. It was new to me, and it's called Sport Exclusive. It's a fingering weight, but it's got a different makeup of fibres, and it's a wool, nylon, and polypropylene.
Oh, that's it.
And it's the polypropylene, I think, that makes it this kind of sport thing. What's it good for, polypropylene?
Well, whatever it was, I think it was that I then checked my other running gear, and that's what my other running gear seems to be made of.
Right.
So
yeah, and the colourway I got, actually, it didn't really look like I expected it to look. It was just one of those things where it looks different on screen. So I thought, I don't know if I want to knit a whole pair of socks in that. So knitting a hat will be a good idea.
I think that's what you should do.
So I'll do that. So yeah, this is all finished, and I think it took about 60 grams. I didn't weigh what I'd got left, but I'm guessing it's maybe 35, 40 grams. So maybe 60, 65 grams I used. And I washed it, and it's all done, and lovely. You can take it off if you want.
I'm fine for now, thanks.
All right, okay.
What else is off your needles?
The last thing, this is something else that you won't have seen, and was inspired by two things, actually. It was inspired by all Dan's colour work that he's been doing. And I just thought, maybe I fancy doing a little bit of colour work. But then also, it was mainly inspired by Murder on the Orient Express that I've been going on. Well, I haven't been going on about, but that I mentioned. When I was watching this film, I just thought, I'd love to maybe knit something that reminds me of this film. And in the film, there is, within the carriage, the train carriage, there's some doors that are there probably 2 or 3 times. They're glass doors, and it's like etched with triangles on the doors. It's very kind of art deco, will it be? And you keep seeing these doors quite a lot in the film, and I was like, do you know what? Maybe I could take that as an inspiration and make a hat. So I did that, and then I also incorporated a little bit of colour work to show that looks like a railway track. So that was kind of my inspiration. And I used Drops Alaska. I bought some more Drops Alaska for knitting some hats. So this is Drops Alaska again. And this is the hat. I love it. Do you like it?
Yeah.
It's really nice. So these 2 areas up here, this bit and then the one down the bottom, if you turn it kind of that way, it's reminiscent of a railway track. And then the little triangles, it's the white one. It was that way up, the triangle. If you look at the white triangles, it was that way up with the points facing down on the glass. I really, really like it. So what I think I'll do is, I think I'll write up this pattern, but I think I'll use it as one of the patterns in my Platinum collection. So it's probably going to be like the September one.
Which is the last one of the 4.
It's the last one of the 4, because then September is like a nice time to start thinking about knitting hats again, maybe, isn't it? And I just really, really love it. I was really pleased with how it came out. I like the graphic nature of it. It would make a really good first time colour work project, I feel, because there's nothing tricky. And I didn't catch any of my floats. The longest run of stitches is 5 stitches. And I know a lot of people would think, well, I wouldn't go 5 stitches without catching my floats, but I'm happy to do that. And it worked out fine, actually. It was, I'll show you my floats. I know some people like to see the floats. I think it's okay. And my tension isn't perfect, but then life isn't perfect, is it, really? This one fits me nicely, but people might prefer it with a little bit more slouch, maybe. So I might work up some more sizes, and I've got to think of a suitable name. But also, Briley said, it looks like Christmas trees, which, if you look at the gold ones, then yes, it does look like Christmas trees, but that wasn't my intention. My intention was that you look at the white. And I'm not sure, actually, if there is a dominant colour. I mean, when you look at it, do you see the white triangles or do you see the gold triangles?
I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm not sure that there is a dominant colour. Looking closely, you see, I would say the stitches on my white ones are slightly, one or two of them look slightly bigger than on the gold. But these colours are lovely. I'll tell you, the goldy colour I think was dark mustard or something like that, and it's colour 58. And then the creamy colour was colour 2. And I used just 25 grams of the cream, and I used about 60 grams of the gold. So I did need to break into a second skein of the gold. But I think that's fine. It's so cheap, this yarn. I think it's like £1.30 a ball. So this probably cost me, £1.50 plus quarter of another ball? Less than £2. I mean, for goodness sake.
That's brilliant.
It cost me, in money, less than £2 to make this hat. And a weekend. I literally, we were watching it on the Saturday, and as we were watching it, I was drawing out the chart. I cast it on that day and finished it the next day. So it got a lovely memory attached to it as well. Again, it's that feeling that's attached to projects. It's got a lovely memory attached to it. And I will give it a suitable name that's reminiscent of something to do with the film, definitely. So yeah.
And that'll be out in September. Exciting.
Yeah.
Folks, that's the end, would you believe it,
Wow.
of What's Off Your Needles. How many projects was that? 6 in total?
6.
5 from you, 1 from me.
Goodness, that's a lot, isn't it?
That really is a lot. It's time for us to head back to York. It's time for us to discover what happened when the Normans and the Vikings met. So I think we should go and get a bit wet and go and finish the story. Welcome to Clifford's Tower, the keep at York Castle, and you can see from up here just how powerful structures like this were. These were the world's first castles, and they formed a very specific design. At the centre lay the keep, where we're stood now. Set high up on a man-made hill or motte, we can see our enemies coming, we can defend the high ground, and we have a lovely place to live. Surrounding the keep, we have an outer courtyard or bailey where soldiers lived. Horses were stabled and tax evaders were imprisoned. Around all that, we had a castle wall, and just beyond that, a moat. So up here, safely in the castle keep, in front of a nice warm fire, we truly were master of all we surveyed. We enter the keep today exactly the same way a soldier would have done in 1067 when it was first completed, through the south side. Now, when the castle was completed, it was fully roofed, and it was actually a family home. This is where the High Sheriff of Yorkshire and his family lived. And the other thing that's so important to remember about Clifford's Tower is this is the father of all castles that came afterward. When this was built, there was no castles in the country. Motte and Bailey castles were the very first type of castle that was built within England, and then everything that came afterward was an improvement, a derivative of that. So if you're looking for the roots of castles, this is most certainly it. And that makes me extremely excited, because if you think about, how the face of the country is very much shaped by ancient and wonderful stonework, well, this was the roots of all of it. And whilst this castle was built in 1067,
1067, there's just little glimpses of the many years that came afterward. You'll notice red stone. Well, that red stone, that actually happened in a fire in 1684. The castle got so hot that the stone physically glowed red and it never changed back to its normal colour. And as we make our way up these rather slippery stairs, we find the chapel. It's extremely small, but it would have been one of the most used rooms in the whole of the castle. The Normans actually brought with them the monastic ideal. So without the Norman invasion, we wouldn't have places like Fountains Abbey or Rievaulx Abbey.
Now, when the Normans arrived here in 1067, they knew how dangerous their new Viking subjects were.
So in anticipation of the impending Viking invasion, they built another castle on the opposite side of the river here at Bale Hill. Combined with York Castle, this, they thought, would be the perfect way for them to control not just the people of York, but also the river too. The Normans knew an attack must be coming from the Vikings, and they knew this was the only place a fleet could land. Surely, with two huge castles and a large host of seasoned Norman warriors, they would hold off any possible attack.
The Viking army arrived in the summer of 1069. And they landed right here on this riverbank. Now I can imagine their sense of righteousness as they walked in the footsteps of their ancestors who'd come here 200 years before, but of course this time they were not here to conquer, they were here to reclaim their own land. Now, the man in charge of the garrison here at York Castle was William Mallet, High Sheriff of Yorkshire.
This is the view William Mallet would have taken in as he waited for the potential Viking raid. You can imagine he must have felt rather confident. Dangerously confident, as it turned out.
But the Viking raid was planned to perfection. One half landed on this side of the river and made straight up there to York Castle, whilst the other half of the army landed on the opposite side of the river here at Bale Hill Castle and engulfed it.
This was the battlefield, and it would have been carnage. These were two of the most fearsome races of people, and whilst the Normans were clean-cut professional soldiers, on that day they were no match for the Vikings. The Danish warriors fought with long swords and axes, some wore wolf or bearskins. These warriors were called berserkers because they charged fearlessly into battle. This is all that remains now of Bale Hill Castle. The attack was so fearsome in 1067 that by the time William the Conqueror set about writing his Doomsday Book, where he charted all the lands that he owned, nothing remained of Bale Hill.
The garrison at York Castle was slaughtered. William Mallet and his family were captured.
Against all odds, the Vikings had won back their home, and for the next year, York was back in their control. But sadly, it was their final victory, their Indian summer. William the Conqueror arrived in 1070 and drove them out once and for all. The Viking Age in England was over.
Folks, all this talk of battles and conquering has made me rather hungry. So I found a nice little spot inside of the castle just over there to sit and have a tiny bit of lunch. And I have 2 falafels and a satsuma. I had planned to get to some shops, but because of the weather, it's just been impossible. So, we need to give it a score for interestability and for picnicability.
And picnicability, there is so many amazing places to get food in York. It's superb. But again, I've got to score it like I see it. And the weather today is abysmal. So I'm going to take 1 point off. So I'm going to give it 9 for picnicability, because there's loads of places to sit down and eat stuff you might have bought. Plus, there's loads of places to get inside. So it's most definitely a 9. So that's 18 so far. We've got 1 score left. That's interestability. And I think you'll agree that whilst I walked this walk 27 years ago completely unaware, and you could walk this walk and have no idea, it is supremely interesting. So it's got to be a 10. So York scores, we'll score it on the leaderboard, it's the first one up. York scores 28. The question is, what of Clifford's Tower of York Castle in the 950 years that followed today's story? There's so many amazing stories attached to this castle, we could make about 10 episodes and probably still come back for more. But to sum it up succinctly, because of the city's central location in England, it became one of the most important royal fortifications. It was visited by numerous kings and queens and was frequently the centre of royal administration across the country. So, in essence, the court, the royal court, came to York Castle and was passing out decrees and ruling from York. For hundreds of years, this landing here, first identified all those hundreds of years ago by Ivor the Boneless as the perfect spot to get up and down the country, proved to be so for the next 800 years as the great and the good of English society used this spot to get around. Now, in 1684, a huge explosion changed the fortunes of the castle completely. The damage caused rendered it useless anymore as a castle, and for 50 years it lay completely derelict. And then, one day, in the early 1700s, the castle simply disappeared from view. Huge prison walls were built around the whole site. York Castle became a military prison, with executions summarily undertaken on the green. The castle and its stories were lost forever. Or so the people of York thought. But then, in 1929, the Gothic walls finally came down, and Clifford's Tower was revealed again at last. But hang on a minute, our story is not quite finished, because I haven't finished my walk. Now, unbeknownst to me, scattered along the route from my grandma's, our Viking ancestors had left me so many clues to their existence. From here, Coppergate, the shopping centre that their cup-making industry gave its name, to St Olave's Church, built and consecrated by the Vikings just 11 years before their forced departure. Perhaps the reason I couldn't see their story all those years ago was the centuries of future history catching my eye. But now I understand the Vikings a little more. Everywhere I look, I catch glimpses of the city that they founded. And where was I heading on my route from Grandma's? to where my mum worked, here in King's Square. In researching this film, I found out how King's Square got its name. In 895 AD, the Vikings built a royal palace right here. Now, the Norse word for royal palace, and do pardon my pronunciation, is Konungsgöta. Translate that word into English, and you get King's Court, which is how this place was known for hundreds of years. It was only in the 15th century that it became known as King's Square. No matter where you turn in York, the Vikings are never far away. The Vikings may be gone, but their legacy will live on forever. Whilst most people who walk this route will never know the story that we've uncovered today, the ground that they broke as they built this city will shape its future forever. I'll see you next time for more new adventures.
Yes! Episode 1 is in the books. There will be, those of you who watched the gold edition last year, there will be a gold edition that is out now, and there's a link in the show notes so you can head over and watch the gold edition. Interesting question. Why is it called Clifford's Tower? Now, that is a very tricky thing to get to the bottom of because no one is completely sure. But the theory which, there's two theories, there's two main theories as to what's what. And the theory which I'm absolutely convinced is right, because this is how it used to work in the sort of 1700s. They hung someone off the side of the castle and his name was Clifford.
Oh, right.
That's what used to happen. So this particular dude was called Clifford, hung from the side, and the people just came...
All I can think about is the big red dog.
Yeah, I know, Clifford. It wasn't Clifford.
Brian used to love that.
That would be terrible, wouldn't it, if Clifford was hung from the side. But it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Neil, spring into wall draw.
Yes.
Do you want to come and see this live? They want to know who won.
Yes, bringing to wall the tickets. The giveaway has closed. I've drawn for some winners. I've actually Ravelry messaged the winners because I wanted to get their email addresses, but I will let you know who won. I did random number. We had 15 entries, so it was, 14. It was 2 to 15, and the first winner was number 5. And number 5 is Sam from Wakefield.
Wow.
She's Sam Chandler on Ravelry.
Yay.
And then the second winner was number 9, and that's somebody we know very well, and that's Michelle.
Yay.
Michelle, who lives in Hull, and she is Shell J33 on Ravelry, and we actually met her at the last Spring into Wool. Well done, you two, and you will, if you've not got your tickets already, they're on their way to you. So
Yes.
brilliant.
That's cool.
Thank you for entering into that.
And thank you so much, the organisers of Spring into
Yes,
Wool, for
absolutely.
letting us give away some of those tickets.
Yeah.
Which is just, we can't wait. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
The next patron-only podcast is on Sunday at 2 p.m, but it is at BST. It's 2 p.m, British summertime.
Yes.
But if the clocks have changed in America, I don't know how.
I don't know.
Just go online.
Yeah.
It is at 2 p.m. BST.
Yes.
Look, I can't hold it in anymore. There's
Yeah.
been this massive basket sat in my eye line the whole way through. Why has it been there?
Why have I got a basket?
Well, yes, it's been sat there. We're nearly at the
Yes.
end of the show.
If you remember last time, I told you I'd been reading this book, the Simple Abundance book, and I'm still reading it every morning. I'm reading that day's entry, and I'm still absolutely loving it. And I think it's been such a beneficial thing for me, especially just lately. I've just had awful anxiety issues lately, and I'm not going to go into it, but it's just been really, really, really helpful. One of the things that I read probably a couple of weeks ago now, on a couple of the days, was, I think I mentioned it, was about hope chests and also about toy boxes, making your own toy box. And this really, I just thought, oh, do you know what? I'm going to do something like this. And I really like having something to look forward to, and I like planning for that thing. So I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself a toy box, and I'm going to start filling it just with yarns that really appeal to me and that I really love and that I want to do something with. And I'm going to take that toy box away with me on holiday in the summer, and I'm going to knit something from it. That's what I've done. I went and I bought myself a really pretty, I wanted just something simple. I didn't want anything fancy or anything like that. And I wanted something that I could use afterwards as well that would be good. So I bought myself this little wicker box. It's a nice size, it's not too big, it's easily transportable, and I thought this is a great size just to pop down by the side of a chair on holiday and just have things in. And it's got a lovely lid, and it said in the book as well, make sure it's got a lid. So I've got myself a toy box, and I mean, when it said a toy box, it means, I think the intention was that you put things in there that bring you joy. So that really depends on what it is that are your loves. It may be that you love stationery, so you might want to put in there some lovely pens and notebooks. And
I think there's something to be said as well for calling those things toys, because we seem to think that we shouldn't call them toys, but
and
we
I think
all have
that
things we like to play with.
Yeah, that was the good.
So they're
that's
toys.
a good point. Yeah, I think we just automatically assume that it's just children that can have toys.
No.
But why not have a toy box?
Yeah.
Because I think as well as adults, there's not a lot really that we have that's just yours. And, when you're a child, you have toy boxes and you have toys, don't you? And they're yours. And adults wouldn't think of taking them away and sharing them. So I've just been putting yarns in here as I've come across things and just thought, oh, that'd be really nice to do on holiday. So I'll just show you so far what I've got in here. And I bought myself a little pretty notebook. It's just a little notebook. And what I'm going to put in here, I wanted to kind of avoid having to look too much on like a iPad or things like that for a pattern. I wanted to have something written down, so I can avoid looking on screens a little bit whilst I'm on holiday. So I thought I'll get myself a little notebook, and I will put in here things like how I made the bookmark, because I've put into here just a couple of DPNs that I knit those bookmarks on, and I used 2.5 millimeters, I think they are. So I'll put the DPNs in there, and I will just write down the little recipe that I used for the bookmark, so that I know that if I fancy making one of those on holiday, that's already in there. I will write in here the recipe for socks for me and Bryony and socks for Dan, just roughly, so just all the numbers, so that again it's in there and I don't need to reference anything else. And also maybe just I wanted to have a little notebook while I'm away, just in case inspiration strikes for patterns or yarn colourways or anything like that, then or things we want to do on holiday. So I thought I'm going to put that in. And then I've also put in there one of my favourite needles for knitting hats, for like sock head sort of hats, because I thought, I love knitting those, and I'm sure that would make a lovely holiday project. So I always use Knit Pro Nova 3mm, so I've got that in there already, and I'll write in here the recipe I use for the sock head hat sort of things, or Dan's running hat. I think it was a running hat I was thinking I'd knit you actually. I dyed up recently, just in the last update, I did these minis, which I called it fat-free Easter eggs. It just sort of made me smile to call them that, and I just love the colours. It's soft pastel colours. So I kept a set for myself. And I thought either, I can use these for Scrappy socks, which is what we spoke about. I'd maybe dye up like one more colour for heels, and maybe Scrappy socks, because these are very kind of Peter Rabbit colours, aren't they? And very, light summer colours. So I've got those in there. I've also got another mini skein that's from, I think this was Hedgerow Yarns, and when I got this, it was in a set of all other ones, and I just love it. And I've just kept it, and I just kept looking at it, so I thought I'm going to put that in there. It's just beautifully speckled, and it's just so lovely. And I so admire dyers that can dye yarn with speckles like these, because it's not an easy process getting a really delicate speckle. And that, I just love the colours. There's bright pinks and oranges and yellow, tiny specks of blue. And again, I just thought, I've no idea what I'd do with that, but I just wanted that in there. You know, it might be that I make a scrappy hat and use these for all, you know, for a hat. I just loved it. So I thought, right, that's going in my toy box. And then another colour that I dyed recently was called Mother of Pearl. And again, this is a really delicate colour. And I kept one of the skeins back, but I actually split it into 20 gram minis, and I gave some of those away with some of the yarn orders that were placed recently. But I think there's about 25 grams here. I kept this for myself. I don't think this colour will show because it's so delicate, but we'll give it a go. It just looks like a taupey sort of colour. It isn't. It's full of really delicate pinks and lemons and blues. It just doesn't transfer very well on the screen, unfortunately, but I've got some of that in there as well. And then the last thing I've got in here at the moment is some sock yarn to knit some socks for me, because I've had this sock yarn for quite a few years actually. I tracked some down and I bought 2 skeins, one for me and one for my friend Sally, and I sent Sally a skein and she knit socks out of it, more or less straight away. But I've kind of hoarded it. I thought, do you know what, I'm going to take that away with me because it's silly and I should knit socks with it. And it's this Trekking XXL, which was based on, is it Brax Candy? It's like this coconut sweet thing. It's sort of pinks and browns and like a golden colour and a sort of neutral colour. Really, really pretty. It's colourway number 126. It's discontinued as far as I understand now. But I sort of hoarded a skein. And I think I'm going to use this Drops Fable for the heels. I think that will look really lovely. So that's in my toy box as well. So that's everything that's in there so far. But I'm just going to keep adding little things, you know, if I see a pattern that I really like, that I'd like to do. And, you know, if it's a long pattern, maybe I'll print it and just stick it inside my little book. But I want this just to be full of just lovely things so that, you know, when I go away, I can, it's just that excitement and anticipation of looking forward to something. And then the very last thing that I've got is I got some yarn that I pre-ordered a few weeks ago, and it arrived, and I pre-ordered it from London House Yarns. It's a Harry Potter colourway and it's Hermione's jumper. I've wanted this for ages, and I saw pre-orders were up a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, I'm going to order that. So it's this fantastic self-striping, and it replicates one of the jumpers that Hermione wears. You'll know which jumper I'm referring to if I show you the colours. So this might go in my toy box, because I think this would make a super fun pair of socks to knit on holiday, and it is lovely colours, so that might be going in my toy box, you never know.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks very much. Thanks much, Lee. We'll be back next week with the last ever Dan Sock quest. And I will, as I mentioned on a previous episode, be doing a tiny bit of drumming, because if I drum, then it means someone has promised their wife that they will give knitting a go. Wow. So I'm going to just talk just at the very end of that, because that whole series, you could just see my drum kit just out the side, so that's raised a little bit of interest. So just a couple of minutes of drum talk, but I'm going to review all the socks that I've knit and just talk about all the things that I've taken from the whole process. And then next month, a new series will actually commence, and that will be my journey towards my first colourwork jumper.
Wow.
So you'll get to join me every month as I take the steps needed and I get knitting, and you know, there'll be pitfalls and peaks and troughs and all sorts. But
I didn't know about this.
Yeah. It was actually an idea by one of the lovely ladies from the Pentacle Needles podcast.
Oh, right.
Talia wanted me to chart my colourwork journey, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you, Talia, for that idea. And then also next week we'll be back with our next Hunt for the Perfect Cup of Tea. And then the week after, we will be back with episode 97. The Pudding Club will be back. And finally, it'll be time for me to have some more Spotted Dick. Yes. I cannot wait.
Yummy.
So do not miss that. And of course, we mentioned too, Patreon Only podcast on Sunday at 2 p.m. So much to look forward to. We better go and get on with it. Yes. We'll see you in 2 weeks for more.
Bye, everyone.
Sitting and knitting, standing K the bakery prayers. Enthusiasm's not quitting, for Dan and K the bakery prayers. They'll take you to fabulous places, of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern, put yourself castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down